I request you to please join us on the dais to deliver your acceptance speech. Chairman of the 15th Finance Commission, Shri N K Singh.
Good evening to all of you. Good evening, Honorable former President of India, Shri Ramnath Kovindji, Dr. Arvind Pangadia, Harvansh Rai ji, and Justice Shiv Kirti Singh, the chairman of the jury. Let me at the outset express my gratitude to the jury for having found me worthy of this prestigious TIOL, for having found me worthy of this prestigious TIOL Heritage Award. Worthy because it is in the illustrious steps. After all, Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was my mentor, a towering personality, a teacher, under whom I learnt a lot, with Professor Jagdish Bhagwati, who has taught me, and so has his wife, Padma Desai, taught me at the Delhi School of Economics. By some strange coincidence, the two ended up in also teaching my son. And Jagdish said, very rarely is it a case that both husband and wife have taught both the father and the son. It was an absolute pleasure to be with him and that illustrious group. With you, of course, Harvanshji, we share a warm relationship, and you have many a time navigated the turbulent tides of the Rajya Sabha with your characteristic equanimity and ease, and it was a great privilege to see you in those positions. What can I say about the former president? Sir, it was under your signature, I was appointed the 15th Finance Commission chairman and had the privilege of submitting 2 reports to you, and more recently, also being a member of the high-level committee which you chaired. Indeed, sir, you will recall that in some ways this is quite unique because it is for the first time in post-independence India that former President of India agreed in national interest to chair a committee appointed by the government. Equally so, it is for the first time that such a committee presented its report to his immediate successor, the current President of India, Draupadi Murmu ji, where I was present. I am grateful to Dr. Arvind Pangadia, the chairman of the 16th Finance Commission. And by the way, as I was mentioning to you, by some coincidence, we have today more than a fair share of the Finance Commission. Professor Pangadia, you are there, 16th Finance Commission. I was his immediate predecessor. Dr. Vijay Kielka, chairman of the 13th Finance Commission. Dr. Rangarajan himself, who spoke, the chairman of the 12th Finance Commission. So quite a surfeit of finance commissions, including many members who have spanned many such finance commissions. It's also my privilege that today I find many of my erstwhile colleagues from my earlier department, the Department of Revenue, which I cherish and where I thought one had tried to endeavor in the turbulent times of 91 to 93, which was referred to by other speakers, that is the Revenue Department, a lot of which whom are present here, I'm really proud to have them. And of course, above all, so many of my friends, my colleagues, my others with whom I have worked, thank you so much. I'm indeed gratified that even on a Saturday evening, with so many other competing issues, you have found time to be here. I'm profoundly grateful for all the warm words which have been spoken about me, and indeed for the many other speakers whose video we could not play. Before I make some substantive remarks, let me just say that the issue of fiscal deficits is of recent origin in India. Earlier, as Montek, Shankar, Sudipto, and many others would know, the words which were being used for successive decades was budget deficit. Compared to that, the terminology of fiscal deficit originated from the committee's report under Professor Shukmoy Chakrabarti in 93-84, when for the first time he encouraged the government to use the concept of fiscal deficit than merely budget deficit. But indeed, following that, years of unabated fiscal profligacy resulted in India seeking resort successively to assistance from multilateral organizations for balance of payments crisis and so on. Much later, indeed much later than the founders of the Constitution would have really contemplated. We read the kind of rapport, those debates, or what Ambedkar and others had said about the need to have a fiscal law. Much later, it was only, as Vijay very rightly pointed out, in 2003, for the first time, a Fiscal Responsibility Management Act was enacted during the period of late Prime Minister Vajpayee. And that was a major fundamental change. As we go forward, it was somewhat later in the period of Prime Minister Modi that I was privileged to lead and chair the committee for a review of that Fiscal Responsibility Management Act, which recommended debt as an important principal anchor, along with mere fiscal deficit, by using fiscal deficit as a trigger for enabling debt management to be within limits of solvency. So as you go forward, let me just make 6 brief points. First, countries all over the world, which were earlier influenced by the framework that we know called the Maastricht Agreement, are now using a different refrain. Maastricht is dead and gone. Do we need another Maastricht Agreement? Or do we need a country-specific agreement? Do we need, what should be that global framework? Or, for instance, can AI offer technological breakthroughs for real-time data, making cyclically adjusted fiscal deficit in a necessary time frame for the recalibration of fiscal policies? This is something on which many of my friends sitting here, like Shankar, Montek, etc., encouraged me to do so. But at that time, I do not think data was available. Now data and technology has made a more fundamental shift to cyclically adjusted fiscal deficit management. And the fact that we can do so needs us that we should embark on this. How, for instance, should the quality of expenditure and expenditure outcomes impact the fixation of fiscal norms? Second, we know that long-term growth emanates from investments in asset creation and infrastructure. Do these deserve a separate treatment than one size fits all in determining fiscal deficits? What should be the ingredients in a post-pandemic world which generally combine the virtues of growth with macro stability? And we cannot talk of fiscal deficit without considering what I said earlier, the issues of revenue and revenue buoyancy. There is a symbiotic relationship between taxes, tax reforms, fixation of fiscal norms, and acceptable levels of debt for seeking enhanced levels of economic growth. Third, what about the uncertainties of geopolitics and geoeconomics? How shall we learn and adapt to much greater uncertainties than the world has been accustomed to in recent memory? Fourth, our Prime Minister, just last week, speaking at the 90th RBI anniversary, spoke of growth, stability, and growing debt problems, public debt and private debt. Investor decisions are influenced by rating agencies and do not look to designated debt, but to government debt as a whole of the center and the states. Data suggests, unfortunately, that the global average debt now approaches or even exceeds 100% and is projected to remain above the pandemic level for half the world. what kind of debt numbers and principles would be consistent with growth objectives? How do we design fiscal rules to secure global compliance? Compliance to fiscal rules is far from encouraging. Can we integrate, for instance, market discipline in the design of fiscal rules? The important issue is of accountability. Can market disciplines be embedded in what we all know sovereign spreads, which ensures a degree of accountability, and these all require fresh thinking. Fifth, how does the quest, and this is rather important and contemporary, how does the quest for vastly enhanced additional financing secure a non-disorderly transition to an era of renewable fuels? And how does it impact the fixation of fiscal norms? Is a different threshold necessary during this transition process to accommodate the additional vastly enhanced financial needs? Who monitors them? What are the control mechanisms? The area of climate and climate financing and its relationship to fiscal norms is an area on which much more work needs to be done. Sixth, a vastly integrated economy, rating agencies, their discussion in the fixation of what we know are Basel norms, their influences on the boardrooms of major investors all over the world, and the ability to look at debt, both public and private, will remain very segmented, even as public-private partnership must occupy center stage for financing an orderly transition to an era of renewable energy. We need to have a more holistic approach. We need to do away with the past. We need to look to the future. We need to look to what technology has to offer. We need to think afresh, and if necessary, go back to the drawing board. After all, it was said in the Vedas long, long ago that wealth has to be won by the deeds of glory. Wealth must be won by combining the virtues of growth with fiscal prudence. This is the heart of a robust macroeconomic framework, a precursor for India's quest to become a developed country. Let me end by just recalling what Swami Vivekananda had said in this related context. He said, and I quote from Swami Vivekananda, quote, he is truly a man to whom money is only a servant. On the other hand, those who do not know how to make proper use of money hardly deserve to be called men, unquote. Fiscal prudence is embedded in this philosophy that Swami Vivekananda articulated long ago. Thank you very much for allowing me to share some of my thoughts.